Sam Marshall shares uplifting stories and conversations with people making Johannesburg and the world a better place.
Well, today we spotlight an event that's become a cornerstone of tourism and the hospitality calendar. It's the Hospitality Industry Think Tank taking place on the 8th of August at the Peninsula Hotel in Sandton. Now in its third year, this flagship gathering brings together South Africa's top hospitality brands, leaders and change makers to collaborate on real actionable solutions for growing the tourism sector, not just for profitability, but more importantly, for sustainability. Now, on the line is, we've interviewed him before. He's got a raspy voice, he's got a really good radio voice. It's Chris Goddener, who is the general manager at the Peninsula All-Suite Hotel. He's a leading voice for Dream Hotels and Resorts, and he's also a passionate ambassador for Touching Dreams, a non-profit that's at the heart of this project. Chris, good morning and thanks for joining me.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and welcome to the listeners.
I was saying to everybody, you've got that radio voice, Chris. You've got that timber in your voice. Okay, it's this think tank. Talk to me about this think tank. Talk to me about this event. Talk about the last 3 years and what is the aim of this think tank?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. It's in 3 years of operation, so this will be our third year. It's a coming together of industry players to really look at the current challenges that are facing us in the hospitality environment. And from that, as industry players discuss solutions. I think, we spend a lot of time hearing about the problems, but never coming up with the plans to put things right. So we each year select a number of topics and a number of panels to actually discuss together with an open floor to the participants, and there are over 100 people that come through that. At each panel, there are 4 specialists on that topic. So yes, and you do mention that it's not a profit-making event. It's actually one that raises money to go to 3 different special charities that influence the success of our country.
3 years ago, the industry was a little bit different. 3 years ago, we were, I think, just coming out of COVID. We were looking very, very different in terms of what the industry was looking like. There was a lot of work being done to resuscitate the industry, so the conversation was very different. Now we're in 2025. This conversation is happening in a year that has been tumultuous for South Africa. It's been a year where we've been at odds with the Americans. We've had to think about the way we travel, the way we see ourselves. How does the conversation this year, also it's the year of G20, how does the conversation reflect what's happening in our environment?
But hugely so. As we all know, the world is changing every day. So we need to be flexible and able to shift and change direction at any given time. You're quite right. The conversation was about Eskom energy, attracting people, were international travelers coming, through after COVID, those kind of things, which were real issues at that time. But they've moved on. And I think, as much as economy or the economic state is always a problem, we need to be seeing hospitality as one of the youth employment opportunity vehicles for, solving probably the country's biggest crisis. So we have the potential to grow tourism, which creates jobs. So how are we going to do that, and where do we manage to do that? And that's through growth projects. So, this year, firstly, it's becoming a little bit more Southern African and not just South African. So the first conversation is really around operating in the political environment. So what are the restrictors that are actually coming in currently? All right. The second conversation is more sort of brand AI based, that we've actually got a lot of technological changes which are confronting us. Yeah. The third one, is coming in, with an AI, not with the AI, but with the funding opportunities. It's all very well to, expand and grow, but how do we do that? Is there money available, without paying huge interest rates and such like? So we're looking for different funding vehicles. You mentioned, the fact that the changes in America are affecting that type of work. A lot of our projects are sustainable and were funded on sort of wildlife projects which came from international funding. Unfortunately, that's all pretty much dried up, so we're going to have to look for other resources. So how do we do that? And I think there's always money available internally as well as externally. We just need to learn how to find it.
I know this firsthand, of course, because I covered the work that your organization does in the social impact space. But I think you'll agree with me that for the longest time, and I'm happy to say it's changing, because I think dream hotels and okay. So we've got to apologize for the technical issues, right? It's been a little bit crazy, but it's that Monday technical gremlins that's messing up the system. But we finally got it on air. Thank you very much for your patience. We appreciate it. So let's continue our conversation with Chris Goddener, who's the GM of the Peninsula All-Suite Hotel. He's a leading voice for dream hotels and resorts. He's also a passionate ambassador for Touching Dreams. Before that untimely interruption, we were talking about the hospitality industry think tank, which is taking place on the 8th of August at the Maslow. It's in its third year, and it's all about brands, leaders, change makers collaborating on real actionable solutions for growing the tourism sector. And before the break, Chris was eloquently talking about how the conversation has shifted from the challenges we were facing in terms of tourism to where we are now in this digitally, technologically connected environment. What does that mean? He was talking about investment drying up from certain sectors in the world and how we would have to innovate. And I was about to talk to him about tourism and this viewpoint that a while ago it was all about viewed through this lens of profit. But I was also saying that I've seen firsthand the work that Dreams Hotels and the Touching Dreams organization, how they've really looked at sustainability, giving back to community. But they're not the only ones. If you think of what Sun International is doing with their projects, and there's a couple of others, Hotel Santon Sky, and the work that they're doing with young people. So, Chris, this brings me to my next question, and welcome back. Thank you for your patience. Talk to me about the sustainability model, that tourism for a long time was viewed through the lens of profit, but leaders like yourself, you've really anchored sustainability and community investment, and it's become a big part, not just of the industry, but also the event's DNA.
100%. I think the whole world of industry has changed, not just hospitality. I think with future leadership styles, we're starting to understand that we're dependent on the communities around us for our businesses to survive. So we need to be working alongside and with the communities and reinvesting back in. We can't sit and look at the silo of our own little establishments. We need to be working externally and bringing those people on board to what it is that we're doing. So sustainability is everything, and it's not just things like weather and recycling and energy. It's really about a people impact in our environments. If we've got poverty, if we have people unemployed, it's only going to negatively impact on the businesses. So, it makes full and common sense to start paying it forward. I'm also a believer in energy exchange, and if you're paying it forward, you're going to get it back. So, rather than actually look at your balance sheet or your profit and loss statements, it's really important that we're reinvesting, in our future, which is, youth unemployment. It's definitely reinvestment in our infrastructure process to recycle as well. I mean, global warming is a real thing. When we are dependent on people traveling, coming in. So it doesn't take rocket science to understand that we need to look outside of our businesses and build a community feeling. And I think this is something throughout South Africa that we do so well. We just sort of sometimes our own worst enemies, criticizing each other about it.
But I think you will agree with me that your think tank has, for the longest time now, over this 3 years, you've tried to find the balance between economic growth with environmental responsibility. And I see those conversations have really matured. And I wonder how you reflect on that in terms of the leaders that come to the conversation, that there is this understanding that we can have economic growth, but we also have to be environmentally responsible, especially when you think about tourism's footprint, that it touches some of our country's most fragile ecosystems.
You're so right. I mean, it's spoken about with travel and air flights and hotels themselves utilizing and impacting carbon footprint throughout. So when we are utilizing, the putting more carbon into our atmosphere, we need to compensate that by doing external things that are going to override that damage that's being done. So yes, whether it be going and planting trees or working with communities, it's very much part of that. I think the biggest thing is that we used to operate so much in silos, each individual property doing its own thing, whereas this is much more of an industry coming together to actually find solutions for common causes or common problems. And I think in the past we would never, sort of talk to our competitors, and I think now we're much broader, stronger voice when we speak together. It has a bigger influence, on government funding, those types of things. So yes, it's all working together to bring about real change.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important conversation because our listeners need to know, when you check into, for example, Dream Hotel and Resorts, that you're kind of tying into a much bigger philosophy, a much bigger sense of being part of a community. And I mean, at some point, probably closer to December, we'll talk about the campaign that you guys do when you invite visitors to bring toys, and that goes to the orphanage that you guys built last year. So I think before we end the conversation, we will touch, for example, on the beneficiaries that will be benefiting from this conversation. But before that, I just want to touch on one other thing quickly, which I think is very, very important, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that one of the big challenges for us is that, yes, obviously, Dream Hotels and Resorts, you are a fairly big player in the space, but we need to have these conversations to also open up the industry for much smaller operators, for independents, for local entrepreneurs. They need to be involved in the conversations. They are the big Dream Hotel Resorts of tomorrow, the Sun Internationals of tomorrow. How do we balance that conversation?
I think that's the exact purpose of the think tank. It's not there anymore just for the large groups to participate, but 50% of the people attending will be coming from smaller independent organizations, and will come in and be able to sit down and have a similar discussion. And it's a bit like the internet today for marketing and sales. A small player can create just as big an impact. The think tank now is about bringing those, what might be perceived as smaller voices, and actually bringing them out in the open and being heard. And I think what we need to be doing as an industry is start listening. So often, we came up with our own ideas and impacted that onto, our customer base, whereas now we're starting to listen to our customer, work with the communities, work with the people around us, and team up and partner with smaller businesses, with bigger businesses. And I think that's great for everybody.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you'll also agree that we forget the power that the hospitality has to absorb young people into those spaces. It's a low-hanging fruit in terms of being able for an unskilled young person who's sitting at home to be able to come into an industry that opens its arms to that person, but has the mechanisms to train them, to be able to engage with them. And then I've read of remarkable stories where some young person comes into the industry at this level, 10, 12, 13 years later, they're a GM, they're running departments. And I think it's almost unparalleled if you think of what hospitality can do for somebody who has very limited opportunities but has drive if you compare it to other industries.
There's no doubt of that. I mean, even in other industries, the big CEOs, not too many that didn't, over their university careers, maybe work as a barman or work in a restaurant, getting that skill. And they'll tell you that some of the greatest skills they learned was when they were actually having to work on the other side of the bar, having to communicate, having to build social skills, having to build communication, understanding the product we're working with. We're in lifestyle, we're really creating a platform, for everybody to get involved in. And there are huge career opportunities. And in reality, as much as we talk about AI coming in, that's to remove the bureaucracy, to be able to open up far better, more human conversations that are creating exceptional experiences, which is what we're really trying to do. We're, our nonprofit is Touching Dreams, and we're trying to open up those avenues to, bring real life dreams, into reality. So that's what we do. And really, it's open for everybody. We can take people straight out of school, coming in, train them up. A lot of workplace apprenticeship systems are coming in. There's a lot of funding coming forward for that. So there are opportunities for those that sort of leave school now, possibly not with the greatest matric, coming in, and entering, a business on a 1-year learnership type apprenticeship. So definitely, and those people grow, they do, and there's no doubt. I mean, I started once just as a room service waiter and grew in my career, and the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my days at the Dross as a waiter, and if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to take out my girlfriends. Okay, listen.
Has that advantage as well? There's no doubt.
Okay, let me be serious. A final question. A little bit earlier, as we started off, it was very important to note that this is not about profitability. This is about sustainability, and there are 3 organizations, NGOs, that will be benefiting from this engagement. We know that Touching Dreams is one of them. Can you mention the other 2 for us?
Sure. We've actively, since the beginning, worked with Reach for Dreams, and that obviously is giving young children children that actually have some threatening illness that possibly don't have the hope to work forward to a cure.
Yeah,
so Reach for a Dream, very well known. Yeah. And then the other one, I mean, we work in Africa. The biggest attraction is our wildlife. So we've partnered with Endangered Wildlife Trust. That's working on our sort of natural resources in our game reserves. There was a recent vulture poisoning
it was a big scandal
happening. Yeah. So Endangered Wildlife Trust were very much part of actually, saving 80 of the 100 poisoned birds that were, unfortunately, in another incident, they didn't manage, or they weren't involved, and they all died. And people don't understand how sometimes the vulture is the cleaner of the bush. And, without them, the disease runs rampant, and it's then threatening our whole environment, which attracts these tourists in the first place. So we've got to keep that alive as well. So it's not just the people, it's our whole total fragile, ecosystem that we operate with. Yeah. So Endangered Wildlife Trust, Reach for a Dream, and then Touching Dreams is that project to, sort of reinvest in our youth coming in. So it's youth development projects, such like the learnerships that I spoke about. So it's all for a good cause.
Yeah, and I can proudly say I'm on your mailing list for all 3 of those, so I get all their latest stories. I get to see what they get to do firsthand. And I mean, what Touching Dreams have done with building orphanages and rethinking the way they're integrating communities, the work that Julia and the team has done for Reach for a Dream, with fulfilling wishes for children, and how it brings light to families in their darkest moments. And then, of course, Endangered Wildlife Trust. And I remember that story, and the team over there worked incredibly hard to save those vultures. And I mean, if you just go to any of these websites, you'll see the amazing work that these guys do. Chris Goddener, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for sharing this time. My apologies for the technical breakdown, but yeah, I love the work that you and the team are doing.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. It's great chatting.
Yeah, fantastic, man. That's Chris Goddener, General Manager at the Peninsula All-Suite Hotel, a leading voice for Dream Hotels and Resorts. He is a passionate ambassador for Touching Dreams, talking to us about their event, the Hospitality Industry Think Tank, taking place on the 8th of August at the Maslow Hotel. Please go to their websites, check out the work that they do. We will be back after this with our regular, I'm staring at her, she's looking at me, Bernadette Boule is here.